What if I told you that the man who inspired Britain during World War II was once considered a poor student? What if a young man who failed important exams, faced criticism, and made countless mistakes would one day become the voice of hope for millions? And what if his speeches became as powerful as an army during humanity's darkest hour? This is not just the story of Winston Churchill. It is a story of courage, determination, failure, and never giving up. Welcome to English Orbit, where you improve your English through inspiring true stories. Now, let's begin. On November 30, 1874, a baby boy was born at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England. His name was Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. Unlike many famous leaders who were born into poverty, Winston came from an aristocratic family. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a respected British politician. His mother, Jenny Jerome, was an intelligent American socialite. From the outside, Winston's childhood looked perfect. He lived in beautiful homes. He wore expensive clothes. And he belonged to one of Britain's most famous families. But behind the grand lifestyle, he often felt lonely. His parents were busy with politics and social events. As a result, Winston spent much of his childhood with his beloved nanny, Elizabeth Everest. She cared for him with kindness, encouraged him, and gave him the affection he often missed from his parents. Years later, Churchill said she had been one of the most important people in his life. As Winston grew older, he was sent to boarding school. His teachers quickly noticed that he was intelligent. But they also noticed something else. He disliked strict rules. He struggled with subjects like Latin and mathematics. Sometimes he ignored instructions. Other times he spent his lessons daydreaming. His report cards were often disappointing. Many teachers believed he would never become successful. Some even described him as lazy and stubborn. But they failed to recognize one important quality. Winston had an extraordinary imagination. He loved history. He enjoyed reading about famous kings, soldiers, and great battles. While other students memorized facts, Winston imagined himself standing in the middle of history. Those dreams quietly shaped his future. As he grew older, Winston had to decide what he wanted to do with his life. His father believed politics required excellent academic results. Since Winston had struggled at school, very few people expected him to become a politician. Instead, he decided to join the army. He applied to the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. The entrance examination was extremely difficult. On his first attempt, he failed. He studied harder and tried again. He failed a second time. Many people would have accepted defeat. Winston refused. He prepared once more. Finally, on his third attempt, he passed. That experience taught him an important lesson. Failure is never permanent. Giving up is. Life at Sandhurst completely changed him. For the first time, Winston discovered a place where his talents could truly shine. He enjoyed military training. He became disciplined. He developed excellent leadership skills. His instructors noticed a remarkable transformation. The student who had struggled in school became one of the Academy's strongest cadets. In 1895, Churchill graduated as an officer in the British Army. But an ordinary military career was not enough for him. He wanted adventure. He wanted to witness history with his own eyes. He traveled to Cuba as a military observer. Later, he served in British India. Whenever he had free time, he read books on history, philosophy, politics, and military strategy. Although he had received limited formal education, he never stopped teaching himself. Books became his greatest teachers. At the same time, Churchill began writing newspaper articles about the places he visited and the wars he witnessed. Readers loved his exciting reports. He had a special talent for turning dangerous experiences into unforgettable stories. Soon, he had become both a soldier and a journalist. Then, in 1899, while reporting on the Second Boer War in South Africa, disaster struck. Enemy forces attacked the armored train he was traveling on. Churchill was captured. He became a prisoner of war. Many believed his adventure was over. But Winston refused to surrender. One night, he climbed over the prison wall and escaped. Alone. Without food. Without a map. He traveled hundreds of miles through dangerous territory. Every step could have led to capture. Against all odds. He reached safety. His incredible escape made headlines across Britain. Almost overnight, Winston Churchill became a national hero. People admired the young man who refused to give up, even in the most dangerous situation. Little did they know. His greatest battles were still waiting. Soon, Winston Churchill would enter politics. Face devastating failures. And eventually become the leader Britain needed during its darkest hour. The adventurous young soldier had become famous. But fame alone would not make him a great leader. Before saving Britain during World War II, Winston Churchill would first experience some of the biggest failures of his life. When we left Winston Churchill, he had become a national hero after escaping from a prison camp during the Second Boer War. His courage made him famous across Britain. Soon afterward, he entered politics. In 1900, at only 25 years old, Churchill was elected to the British Parliament. Many older politicians underestimated him. Some believed he was too ambitious. Others thought he was too confident. But Churchill possessed an extraordinary gift. He knew how to inspire people through words. His speeches were carefully prepared, powerful, and unforgettable. He never feared expressing unpopular opinions if he believed they were right. Over the following years, Churchill served in several important government positions. Sometimes he achieved great success. Other times he made serious mistakes. One of his biggest failures came during the First World War. As First Lord of the Admiralty, Churchill strongly supported the Gallipoli campaign. The operation ended in disaster. Thousands of Allied soldiers lost their lives. Churchill received much of the blame. His political career seemed finished. Newspapers attacked him. Many friends abandoned him. Critics declared that he would never return to power. For a time, even Churchill wondered if they were right. But he refused to give up. He continued serving his country and learning from his mistakes. During the 1930s, Churchill noticed something that many other leaders ignored. In Germany, Adolf Hitler was rebuilding the country's military. Churchill repeatedly warned that another great war was coming. He urged Britain to strengthen its defenses before it was too late. But very few people listened. After the terrible losses of the First World War, most Europeans desperately wanted peace. Many believed Hitler could be controlled through negotiations. Churchill disagreed. He believed peace could only survive if free nations were strong enough to defend it. Again and again, he raised his voice. Again and again, his warnings were ignored. Some politicians even called him a warmonger. But history was about to prove him right. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Within days, Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. Germany's army moved with incredible speed. Country after country surrendered. Denmark fell. Norway fell. Belgium fell. The Netherlands fell. Then France, one of Europe's strongest military powers, collapsed within weeks. Across Europe, fear replaced hope. Britain stood almost alone against Nazi Germany. The British government lost public confidence. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain resigned. On May 10, 1940, King George VI asked Winston Churchill to become the new Prime Minister. Churchill accepted. He was 65 years old. Many people questioned the decision. Some remembered his past failures. Others believed he was too old and too stubborn. But Churchill understood the enormous responsibility before him. The future of Britain now rested on his shoulders. Only a few days after taking office, he delivered his first speech as Prime Minister. People expected comforting promises. Instead, Churchill spoke honestly. He declared, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat." He did not promise an easy victory, that he warned that terrible sacrifices lay ahead. Yet his honesty inspired confidence. People trusted him because he refused to hide the truth. Soon another crisis appeared. More than 300,000 British and Allied soldiers became trapped at Dunkirk, surrounded by German forces. Many believed Britain's army would be destroyed. Churchill ordered every available ship to rescue them. Not only naval vessels answered the call. Hundreds of ordinary civilians crossed the English Channel in fishing boats, sailing boats, and small private vessels. Against all expectations, over 330,000 soldiers were rescued. The world called it the miracle of Dunkirk. Although Britain had lost much of its military equipment, it had saved its army. Churchill praised everyone's courage but reminded the nation that the greatest battles were still ahead. After France surrendered, many believed Germany would soon invade Britain. Fear spread across the country. Once again, Churchill addressed the nation. His words became legendary. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender." Those words gave hope to millions. Children memorized them. Soldiers carried them into battle. Ordinary families repeated them during the darkest days of the war. Churchill's speeches became powerful weapons of courage. Soon, another deadly challenge began. German aircraft launched massive bombing raids against Britain. The Battle of Britain had begun. Every day, enemy planes attacked cities, factories, airfields, and homes. Young Royal Air Force pilots defended Britain's skies with extraordinary bravery. Many were barely 20 years old. Churchill deeply admired their courage. After one difficult battle, he delivered another unforgettable tribute. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Those words honored the young pilots whose bravery helped stop Hitler's invasion plans. Britain had survived its darkest hour. But the war was far from over. Cliffhanger. Churchill had inspired Britain to keep fighting. Now he faced an even greater challenge. He had to unite the world's most powerful nations. Defeat Nazi Germany. And help shape the future of the modern world. When we left Winston Churchill, Britain had survived its darkest hour. The German Air Force had failed to destroy the nation. The British people refused to surrender. And Churchill's speeches had become symbols of courage around the world. But Britain was still fighting almost alone. Its cities had been badly damaged. Its soldiers were exhausted. Its resources were running low. Churchill understood one important truth. Britain could not defeat Nazi Germany alone. New allies were desperately needed. Then history took an unexpected turn. On June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler invaded the Soviet Union. A few months later, on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States entered the Second World War. Churchill immediately realized that everything had changed. Britain was no longer standing alone. He quickly built strong relationships with American President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Although the three leaders had very different political beliefs, they shared one common goal: defeating Nazi Germany. Churchill spent countless hours attending international conferences, discussing military strategy, and encouraging cooperation among the Allied nations. He believed unity was the strongest weapon against dictatorship. By 1944, the Allies were preparing one of the greatest military operations in history. Its code name was Operation Overlord. The objective was clear: Invade Nazi-occupied France. Open a new front in Western Europe. And begin the liberation of the continent. Thousands of ships, aircraft, and soldiers prepared in complete secrecy. Churchill understood the enormous risk. If the invasion failed, the war could continue for many more years. But if it succeeded, Germany's defeat would become only a matter of time. On June 6, 1944, the operation finally began. More than 150,000 Allied soldiers crossed the English Channel and landed on the beaches of Normandy. Enemy defenses were strong. The fighting was fierce. Thousands of young soldiers lost their lives during the first hours. Yet they continued moving forward. Churchill closely followed every report. As the day continued, good news finally arrived. The beaches had been secured. The invasion had succeeded. D-Day became one of the greatest turning points of the Second World War. The liberation of Western Europe had begun. During the following months, Allied armies advanced across France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. German forces slowly retreated. Finally, on May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered. Across Britain, church bells rang once again. People celebrated in the streets. Families embraced each other. The long war in Europe was finally over. Churchill appeared before thousands of cheering citizens in London. To millions of people, he had become the symbol of Britain's courage and determination. Yet Churchill reminded everyone that victory had come at a terrible cost. Millions of lives had been lost. Entire cities had been destroyed. Freedom had been won through enormous sacrifice. Only weeks after the war ended, Britain held a general election. Most people believed Churchill would easily remain Prime Minister. But democracy brought a surprise. His Conservative Party lost the election. The man who had helped defeat Hitler was no longer Prime Minister. Churchill accepted the result peacefully. He believed democracy must always be respected, even when it brought personal disappointment. Although he left office, he never stopped serving his country. In 1946, he delivered another historic speech. He warned that Europe was becoming divided between East and West. He described this division as an Iron Curtain. His warning marked the beginning of what later became known as the Cold War. Once again, history proved that Churchill had seen danger before many others. Then, in 1951, something remarkable happened. At the age of 76, Winston Churchill returned as Prime Minister. During his second term, he focused on rebuilding Britain, strengthening international cooperation, and preserving peace. Churchill was also a gifted writer. Throughout his life, he published books about history, politics, and war. In 1953, he received the Nobel Prize in Literature for his outstanding writing and speeches. Very few political leaders have ever received such an honor. On January 24, 1965, Winston Churchill passed away at the age of 90. Britain honored him with a state funeral. Representatives from more than 100 countries attended. Millions watched the ceremony on television. People stood silently along the streets as they said goodbye to the man who had refused to surrender when hope seemed lost. Today, Winston Churchill is remembered as one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century. His speeches continue to inspire students, soldiers, and leaders around the world. His life teaches us that failure is never final. Words have the power to change history. And true leadership means standing firm when everyone else is losing hope. The story of Sir Winston Churchill is more than the biography of a British Prime Minister. It is the story of a boy who struggled in school. A soldier who escaped captivity. A politician who experienced failure. And a leader who inspired an entire nation to fight for freedom. More than half a century after his death, his courage, determination, and unforgettable words continue to inspire millions across the world. If you enjoyed improving your English through this inspiring story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to English Orbit, and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring biographies and historical documentaries. Until our next story. Keep learning. Keep growing. And keep exploring history through English. Thank you for watching.